Hello, everyone. So Congress is in the process of passing the defense budget, and as part of the defense budget, they're mandating that the Marine Corps' Force Design 2030 be independently reviewed. So a lot of concern about this for various reasons. The Force Design FD2030 came out in the year 2020 by the former Commandant of the Marine Corps, David Berger. So basically, he reoriented the Marine Corps on China and the Pacific, going back in history, island hopping campaigns that the Marine Corps did during World War II. And as part of this force design, he did away with tanks in the Marine Corps that they're not needed anymore. He reduced the size of artillery for precision long range fires and reorganized some of the infantry units and logistics units to better support this dispersed warfare across islands that he envisioned. The problem with this was that a lot of the retired community pushed back on this entire plan because they view the Marine Corps as America's 911 force, as America's Swiss Army knife in the traditional missions that we've always had. Now, no doubt that we need to change and adapt to the future, but we need to do it incrementally rather than this wholesale change in the Marine Corps. So Congress, a lot of people complained to Congress, so they came back and they said, "Hey, we want an independent review done on this," and I think it's a good thing. I think it needs to be done. The reason being is because traditionally, if you look at the Marine Corps' history after World War II, we have really been America's crisis response force. We're not the Army. We have the capabilities to take Marine Expeditionary Units, basically reinforced infantry battalion with some special operations capability, an aviation squadron, and a service support group, put them on ships and have them sail around the world. And the reason this benefits our national security is because they're not encumbered by other nations' laws and basing rights. We essentially, that's what I did as a battalion landing team commander, and we're part of the MEU. So it's an interesting mission, and it takes a lot of work to train up to that mission. And I also had tanks. When I had tanks and we went to Afghanistan, we left them behind. We also had amphibious assault vehicles. We left them behind. We couldn't use them. So they stayed on ships. The problem with that was you have to leave Marines behind to do the maintenance. You just can't forget about them because the salt air, they're going to rust. So, so this independent study, I think it's a great idea. It needs to be done. And the reason Congress is doing this is because in light of Ukraine, where tanks are being used, where artillery is being used at a massive rate, is the Marine Corps making the right decisions? Well, we don't know. But the Marine Corps also needs to remain, grounded in its current skill sets and missions. And part of that is non-combatant evacuation, where we rescue Americans from countries that are, in civil war or humanitarian disasters. And unfortunately, in the recent past, we haven't been able to do that. Sudan's a good example. Marine Corps wasn't the force of choice because we just weren't there. That's the bottom line. We're too busy trying to do this experimentation with force design, and we didn't have the Marines afloat on these ships to be able to respond to it. So, the combatant commander and the Secretary of Defense chose the Army Special Forces to do that mission. Another one, a good example is, in Gaza, for example, there were several hundred Americans and Westerners that were stuck there during the bombardment. And they were unable to get out because all the crossing, the Rafah crossing into Egypt was closed off. Now, if we had the capability to be able to go in there as part of a non-combatant evacuation with the Marines and pull those people out onto our amphibious shipping, I think it would have been fantastic. Unfortunately, or maybe they didn't think of it, or maybe because the capability is not there, maybe people are just confused now as to what the true nature of the Marine Corps is. Is it America's 911 force? Is it America's Swiss Army knife? Or is it still doing this experimentation thing? So there's got to be clarity in mission. And the reason that's important is because you have to train up to that mission. When we went out as a battalion landing team as part of the MEU, it took us about a year and a half to train up to it. And part of the problems that you have is, you've got this constant rotation of Marines. When we took over and became part of this Marine Expeditionary Unit, we didn't have all our Marines with us. We had over about 400 submarines that were non-deployable, and they were retained because of stop loss. So the Marine Corps just dumped them into our battalion to have somebody supervise them. And these Marines didn't want to train, nor did we want to expend the resources to train them because it wasn't worthwhile. So we had to gainfully employ them. And the way we gainfully employed them was I asked the sergeant major to figure out who are the plumbers, electricians, carpenters, and painters and welders, and let's identify them and put them to work. So we rehabbed all our barracks, all our headquarters buildings, and also the other battalions that weren't there, they're deployed. We also helped them out. And these Marines loved it because they're doing the skill that they're trained to do, and they're not, being harassed or being going out for training for no purpose at all. So that worked out well. The problem is on the backside, a month before we were ready to deploy, and we're going to Afghanistan. We're getting these young Marines, fresh out of infantry training school, to come and join our unit. And they've got basic skills. They know what an M16 looks like. They know how to put on their gear, but they haven't operated as part of a squad. So right before deployment, we get this mass injection of Marines, just to show on paper, this battalion is fully staffed. Well, that's a shitty way of doing business. It's a shell game, and it's nonsense. And it's not right for the Marines in the squads already or the new Marines that are joining. So it's just poor leadership on our part and some of the inherent problems in the Marine Corps that need to be fixed if we want this force design stuff to be successful by 2030. Yeah, so in summary, I think it's a great idea. I think it's good for Congress to exercise its oversight responsibilities, but there has to be a limit to it. Congress should be turning the military into a social experiment. That's not what we do. The military is designed to go out and defend America's interests overseas or defend our nation. That's what the military does. And when called upon, we are there to, kill people and destroy things. That's our job. That's what we're trained to. And, we don't really give a shit what religion you are, what sexual preference you have, what's your ethnic background. Nobody cares. We want you to come join the military and train to our standards and leave all that personal stuff back at home. Don't care, So that's what we want. And finally, as in that series of podcasts that I've done on senior military leadership, it's good to question the senior military leadership. So you got one 4-star here that made these changes, and you've got all the retired community, to include 4-stars, are upset at because of these changes. So rather than having this public debate, Congress should come in and question them, because the 4-stars, just like the Pope, they're unquestionable. And to me, it's wrong, because I've seen these guys grow up, and I see the type of people that end up becoming 4-star generals. They're no different than you and I, They put on their trousers just like you and I do. They ain't no different. It's just they're fortunate enough to get on a track that somebody pulled them up, and become a general officer. That's the main difference. And later podcasts we'll talk about it. But to 4-stars as a service chief, you're a pope. Bottom line, combatant commander, you're a pope. Nobody's going to question you. Even the Secretary of Defense hasn't questioned you. So these people should be questioned, and Congress has an oversight, responsibility. And later podcasts we're going to talk about, this Senator Tuberville, who's questioning or who's got a hold on military promotions. I've got some thoughts on that as well that I'll share with you. Nonetheless, it's a great thing that Congress is doing. I know a lot of people are upset, feelings are hurt, but there's nothing wrong with having an independent study done on missions and to see if this Force Design 2030 is actually supportable, even by the military-industrial complex, because it's going to require retooling of military equipment. And other services also utilize equipment, or each service is going back to the way we used to operate and have different equipment, which costs the taxpayers a lot of money. So, yeah, it's a good idea. Let's move forward and look forward to reading the results of this independent study. Stay rugged. Khan out.